This is not a rankings video. Don't get me wrong, rankings have their place. Look, I've been doing rankings for years, been an expert ranker on Fantasy Pros for the past several years, both MLB and NFL. I still do it. And you should reference rankings, but at the same time, it shouldn't be the end all be all for how you draft, and neither should ADP. I've been talking about ADP a lot, and I'll continue to do that when I talk about sleepers and breakouts and all the guys that you should and shouldn't draft. It gives you a good sense of where you could potentially find players on draft day. But rankings, it's really a little bit more subjective, of course, and it goes to what people are thinking. So I gotta get into the rankings here and dissect this one because when I look at the expert consensus ranking on Fantasy Pros versus ADP, I'm kind of baffled as to what is happening with Jason Dominguez. And for those who need a refresher or just don't know, I'm talking about the number one prospect for the Yankees, El Marciano himself, Jason Dominguez, who's all of 21 years old. So right now, he's got an ADP of 155 overall, which makes him the outfielder number 40. And I think that's reasonable. There are a lot of good players going ahead of him. Of course, he's still not a proven commodity or anything like that. I think that's fine. I'm a little more bullish on him, but why are the experts who have done their preseason rankings so far, and again, the ones who get on this earlier, usually the ones who are really more in tune, right? A little more proactive about doing the rankings, not just doing them for the sake of doing them and having them. Right now, he's 22 spots below his ADP. I would think that the people who really know ball and the ones who break down the analytics and look at the potential and aren't really afraid of what the other guy's going to do on draft day, right? Just want that upside would be higher on Dominguez. I know I am. So first of all, he's got an everyday job now in left field, and that's what we think he's going to play because that's what Aaron Boone said. Right, with Cody Bellinger there now, he's going to play center, and Dominguez should be locked into an everyday role. And I don't think it really matters what position he plays. I mean, as long as he's in the lineup every day, right? We know there's a big hole to fill with Juan Soto gone. Alex Verdugo is gone. Dominguez really has just needed to stay healthy, and he should be entering this season, so he's going to get that spot in the outfield, but also, again, especially in that Yankees lineup. And any of you who know the Yankees organization or prospects in general, you might wonder, what about Spencer Jones? No, they've already said, Brian Cashman has said, he's not even getting promoted this year, period. Of course, that could change if those adjustments he makes pan out, but right now they're not even looking at him as anybody who is going to threaten to play at all this year. I don't need to explain why being in the Yankees lineup is better than pretty much any other team except for maybe the Dodgers. This is a great place to hit for any hitter, but especially someone who's got power, and the lineup protection will be pretty good, I think. I think the best thing about Dominguez is we're not relying just on the power. He won't have to hit 30 plus home runs to be productive. This is a guy who has actually been more productive as a base stealer than a home run hitter so far in the minors. And he's considered a five-tool prospect. This is why he's so high on all prospect ranks, not just for the Yankees, but again, this guy who can do everything. This is why we've known about him for so long. We've been waiting for him to finally get this opportunity. Last year, in his 56 at-bats for the Yankees late season, 2 homers and 5 steals. At the AAA level last year, he hit .309 with 7 homers and 15 steals, and that was over 175 at-bats. And the 2023 season, across both double and AAA level, hit 15 homers and stole 40 bases. So with all that said, why is he being drafted this low? Well, there obviously is a good reason, and it's that he did not really look that good in his brief time last year in the majors. Hit all of 179 in those 56 at-bats. That included a 28% strikeout rate and some less than impressive defense, which I know some people are concerned about him transitioning to left field in Yankee Stadium. Maybe that's something that he's going to have to really figure out, and that might affect him just overall, even on offense. But really, when it comes down to it, I think there are 3 underlying reasons why Dominguez is kind of being, I want to say, ignored, because, yeah, he's still going to be on everybody's radar. He's still going to be drafted pretty much everywhere, but I think just undervalued based on his super high ceiling. Before we move on, I want you to think about this. If you care enough to be proactive about your fantasy teams, shouldn't you care even more about protecting your identity online? I know it's on me to protect not just myself, but my family, and that's why I started using Aura, now sponsor of Fantasy Endgame. Have you been a victim of a data breach? I always thought it was not going to happen to me until it did. Look, I don't want the same thing happening to my family, my friends, or anybody in the endgame community. It feels like every day you hear about these big companies getting hacked because of their poor security. I can't even tell you how many times I get an alert notification saying my password has been compromised on this site or the other. I can only imagine what kind of information of mine is out there on the dark web waiting for scammers, spammers, and identity thieves to buy it on the cheap. That's why I started using Aura. And the best part is they will do all the hard work for you to keep your identity safe online. They can find data brokers who are actively selling your information online and submit opt out requests on your behalf. There's no way I'd have time to do that, even if I could find all the right places to do it. Give Aura a few weeks and you'll stop seeing all that information on these sites when you search yourself. Aura also monitors the dark web constantly to make sure that my information isn't being exposed, and they'll alert me right away if anyone tries to use this information to access my bank accounts or credit cards. On top of that, you'll get up to $5 million of identity theft insurance just in case the worst should happen. The Aura app also has a VPN with up to 100 virtual locations. Stop leaving yourself vulnerable to data breaches and brokers. Go to aura.com/fantasyendgame and try it free for 14 days to see if your information has already been exposed. Number one, the thing that gets all of us at some point, recency bias. And what we saw last year was that basically all of the big name hitters who were prospects getting their first taste of the majors kind of flopped initially, and some flopped all season long. This is why I just spent another video talking about some of my favorite potential breakouts, guys who are almost being discarded as if, they had their chance and they blew it. Jackson Holiday, who also, like Dominguez, just turned 21 and has barely tasted the majors. Wyatt Langford, I think everybody's all over him, but also, remember, he got up to a really rough start, and it was only to the last month of the season that he picked things up. I mean, otherwise, he was a disappointment for most of the year. And for those of you who maybe drafted him early or just didn't pay attention toward the end of the season, once you were out of it or football season started, you may not realize that he did turn things around. But we had a lot of offensive prospects who just didn't pan out at all last year. And reason number two is kind of ironic because I talk about this a lot, whether you know it or not. Another bias is that big market bias. Usually players who are in New York, LA tend to get a little overhyped, and sometimes, people just subconsciously value them more than those small market teams. But ironically, I think this is working against Dominguez now because in that really big fishbowl, and when we magnify everything that happens for these teams, the Yankees coming off a disappointing loss in the World Series. I mean, it's disappointing offseason losing Juan Soto. I mean, sure, they made some other moves, but I don't think that in the minds of Yankees fans makes up for it. And then the fact that Dominguez, in what we've been waiting for him to break out, hasn't done it yet. So now people are just getting a little bit antsy about him. But really, the main factor, I think, number three, is prospect fatigue. And this has happened to Jackson Holiday already. Believe it or not, again, things just happen so much quicker these days. Don't give these guys barely a chance to do anything, much less develop. And then all of a sudden we're judging them as far as their potential. You've got to realize Jason Dominguez has been on the radar since he was 17 years old. Not exaggerating. Look back in 2020, people are already hyping him up to be the next big thing. I'm really not even exaggerating. People are saying he's going to be the next Mike Trout or whatever. But yeah, it was happening. And this is why I get the nickname The Martian. Thought that he was going to be some otherworldly type of player. And so really anything less than being the best player in baseball is going to be a disappointment, right? At this point, anybody who's followed him and known his name, you've been waiting for him to break out. And when it comes down to it, he's just had some injuries and he's still 21 years old. So let's give the kid a chance. He's got his chance now to be an everyday player, to stay healthy. Why can't he be a guy who hits 20, 25, maybe 30 home runs, steals you as many bases, if not more, hits for average, scores a ton of runs, and drives in runs in that Yankees lineup? I mean, really, I don't understand taking certain guys over him. I can't justify taking a veteran who's already had their best seasons well behind him, like a Nick Castellanos or Brandon Nimmo, or a young player even who, as much as I still like them, just don't have nearly the upside, like a Pete Crow Armstrong, who doesn't really have the power, and a Colton Cowser, who is a guy with, good all-around skills, but isn't going to ever reach the same level, potentially, as a Jason Dominguez, or just your kind of unexciting veterans like an Ian Happ. And yet, all of those outfielders I just listed are being ranked ahead of Jason Dominguez. Can't do it. Like, I'm not going to pull the trigger super early, but don't be one to be fooled by these rankings, this ADP. Yeah, use it as a tool. It's a guide to kind of help you assess what the community at large is thinking. But if you see a guy with massive potential, don't be afraid to reach around to whatever it is to take him, especially when you get to those middle and later rounds. So I am not absolutely guaranteeing that Jason Dominguez will go off this season, but man, I want to find out with him on my roster and not off of it. Now, I did already break down some of those other potential breakout players, guys who didn't quite get it together their rookie season, but definitely could take a leap this year. Well, I got that video right here if you missed it.